We are in the room.
So I want to hear the story of how you went from selling printed magazines
Yeah.
in, I'm not even sure which year, but I know it was at least
For 6
10 years ago.
Yeah, it was 12 years ago.
Okay,
we
so
started.
yeah.
Yeah.
And why? And kind of tell me a little bit about what's happened since then, how Elephant has grown, when you took it off the press and put it on the internet, how that made it a more effective tool.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, where we are now is we're a website with about 10 to 15 staff, depending on how you count it, and we pay about 50 writers a month, and we have hundreds of writers who we don't pay. We pay our best writers, and that can be anybody, depending on the month.
Mm-hmm.
And we're reaching 9.4 million readers a month. We've won #1 in the country for environmental content on Twitter twice, and a ton of others, somewhat, meaningless awards. And yeah, where we came from is 12 years ago. I kind of accidentally helped start this magazine called Yoga in the Rockies. And until recently, on this wall in the room we're in, this is the Elephant office, we had all the copies. So we had 24 issues, we're quarterly, and I was around for 6 years. And this gentleman, Travis, was trying to start this kind of local magazine that would be distributed through yoga studios called Yoga in the Rockies. And I kind of came on, I didn't really want to publish a magazine about yoga, and I didn't want it to be about the Rockies either. I think Bedford's having fun down there. So he actually dropped out. He was smarter than me. He realized it would take a long time to make money off of it, and he was trying to start a family, which he has done since. So he dropped out, and I changed the name after a year to Elephant, because it felt like it didn't tie me down to one thing. And I wanted to talk about, I love climbing, I love bicycling, I love environmentalism, I love politics or political involvement, social action, social good, being a benefit. I've been brought up in the Buddhist community here in Boulder, and Buddhists don't really want to convert people, but we do want to talk about how to live a good, meaningful life. So we include lots of other religions or spirituality or, atheistic ethics. So Elephant could be about a ton of different things, and that was sort of why I named it Elephant. There's the legend of the blind man and the elephant, which you may know.
Tell us the story.
So it's an ancient story, but Rudyard Kipling wrote it kind of most famously. And it's, I think, 6 blind men, and none of them can see, and they're all touching different parts of an elephant. And they're arguing about what it is that they're touching. And one is touching the tusk, and he says, oh, it's sharp, it's a tiger. And one is touching the tail, and he says, oh, it's a snake. And one is touching the leg, and he says, it's a tree trunk. And one is touching the belly, and he's like, it's a wall. And they all basically hate each other and are getting in a fight over it. And the notion is if they could open their eyes and see, they would see they're talking about the same thing. So the notion of elephant is Republican or Democrat, rich or poor, Islamic or Christian or Buddhist or atheist, whatever. We all want to be happy. We all want our children or our grandchildren or the next generations to be happy and safe and have, green grass and blue skies. And
so you're essentially trying to communicate with everyone's basic nature.
Yeah, we're trying to say that, like, the basic fundamental desire, the pursuit of happiness kind of thing, isn't owned by any one tradition or political persuasion, And if we can all just open our eyes and get together, we can kind of work on that together. Instead of sort of saying, my way is right, your way is therefore wrong, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So
do you feel like Elephant reaches very many Republicans and Muslims? Or do you have information about the parameters of your
Yeah, I mean,
leadership?
Republicans, I would say yes. Muslims, I have no way of knowing.
Yeah.
But politically,
you don't have a, what religion are you in the box and when they sign up, right?
I mean, we don't. And it's probably pretty weak. I mean, we're mostly read in English-speaking countries where, U.S. is like 85% of our readership. Canada.
Do you have any other translations?
No. we have some Spanish. We have a fair amount of Spanish content, but not enough that I would, and that's definitely Chinese and Spanish content is something we're going to work on the next year or two, because there's a huge opportunity.
Oh, yeah.
You can see our readership cycle through the day, through the countries, with the sun.
As the time turns. Oh, that's super
it's amazing.
cool.
And we're highly read in like Dubai and India and Australia, but there's huge gap parts of the world where we're barely read. China, for one, I mean, it's very low.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I can see.
We were actually banned from. Yeah, we were banned from China completely for a year or two, but we're back.
You're really kind of bringing in a whole paradigm that China doesn't want to talk about.
Well, right. I mean, they're definitely not huge fans of like the Dalai
Buddhism. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if it's just general Buddhist content, they actually love it. They're fine with it.
They were just
if
not
it
okay
gets
with
at all political, that you're banned.
Have you been there?
No, I pretty much wouldn't go there.
Okay.
To me, it's like entering an occupied. Being brought up in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, like where you disappear if
Free
you're
Tibet.
caught. Yeah, I mean, if you're caught like with a picture of the Dalai Lama, you're gone. It's pretty intense.
Yeah. Some things aren't just worth the risk,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, what are you really going to get out of it that you can't get out of Europe, or maybe a trip to the Amazons? Like, that'd fulfill my.
I mean, I would love to go to Tibet, but I don't want to go to Disneyland Tibet where I'm like cordoned off from actual Tibet. I would want to actually help. Like, I'm involved with the Tibet. It was called. Obviously, I haven't been involved for a year now, but Tibetan Village Project. I've helped MC and fundraise for them for many years, and they actually go and do developments for the super impoverished Tibetans, like Tibetans who, after the earthquake, had no homes in the middle of winter in Tibet. I mean, you can imagine.
Yeah.
They literally were putting up insulated tents for them, like as bad as it gets.
Wow.
But anyways,
I can imagine how cold that is too.
Yeah, I mean the notion that they would
Montana in the Rockies,
or
something like that.
Yeah, or way colder. Yeah.
Wow. So let me bring you back to the old days, because you posted on Facebook a picture, which I'd like your permission to use on my post, of you hawking elephant magazines so many years ago, and I thought that's what actually gave me the inspiration to want to do this article.
Cool.
So I want to hear a little bit more about what it was like in the first couple of years. Like, were you only doing elephant? Were you working multiple jobs? Was this just like a passion? And what was the inspiration to really make it part of what you're doing in your life, like to make it to entrepreneur it to a new level?
Yeah, well, I'm pretty bad with authority figures, so being an entrepreneur was a natural fit for me. I had a lot of great mentors, and I really learned business from one of them, and I learned different things from different mentors. I studied magazine journalism at Boston University, and my father is a journalist, and his father was a journalist, and my mother was a Shakespeare scholar and English professor, and taught at Europa, and I'd been brought up in this Buddhist stuff and was an environmentalist, and so you put all that together and it's sort of elephant. And I mean, the problem in the early years was it was a more than full-time thing. It was like a 90-hour a week. You would get like 3 days off after every issue was distributed, and then you'd be right back at it. But it didn't really pay for a year. So it was tough. I mean, I've done my share of living off of day-old muffins from Redworks. I've done that twice. Where you're doing that for a good 6 months and like counting change. And the second time was when I went online, but we can get to that later. But the first time, just building it up. I mean, I definitely.
Like, when did you take it out of just Boulder?
Yeah, so it was only, from the very beginning, it was distributed through the Rockies to yoga studios and stuff. And I remember the first time I drove it around myself, magazines are super heavy. I mean, they're like compacted wood. They're almost somehow heavier than wood. I don't know how that works.
So like a cord.
Yeah.
Carrying a cord. Or
so
not
heavy.
A cord, but
So my poor car, I had this crappy like Corolla from '83 or something, and I was like driving around, and I ran out of gas and money like halfway through, and had to get like wired money by my partner Travis, and yeah, I'd go from yoga studio to yoga studio and stay with yoga teachers wherever I was and do some yoga, and then Travis dropped out, and I sort of broadened our focus more and more, and renamed it. And relatively quickly, over the first couple of years, it got relatively big, and then after 4 years, I think we kind of had it down. What Elephant was, where we were going, our design aesthetic, our writers, and then we went national through Whole Foods and Pharmaca.
Okay,
and all that
so
stuff.
Whole Foods and Pharmaca.
Everything. I mean,
okay.
Bookstores. You go through magazine distributors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So at that time, I mean, everything.
And what year about was that?
I guess that was like 2006 or 7, because we started in 2002.
Mm-hmm.
I remember we rented an office kind of close to Vic's in 2002, and I had this Apple laptop, that weighed probably 3 times what mine does now. And I said, I'm going to go to Vic's and work on my laptop on their wireless internet. And that was like a radical notion at the time, that you could leave an office and go work on Wi-Fi, which is now a whole culture. Everyone does this. So it's almost like the beginning of the era we're in now, 2002. YouTube didn't exist. Things have changed. WordPress, I think, was invented a couple years after, so it couldn't have even gone online that easily or cheaply from the beginning. So yeah, things have really rapidly evolved with, kind of
technology.
Yeah, I mean, right before wherever I've gone, luckily things have evolved to allow me to go there, which has been kind of fortuitous. Technology, obviously, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. But yeah, the first 6 years, I mean, our distribution points weren't Facebook or Twitter or YouTube. They were bookstores and yoga studios and Whole Foods and other grocery stores. And then, yeah, we went national, and I was sort of, I hadn't really failed. I had worked really hard, and things had gone really well. And it was sort of this golden boy feeling, when you have success and you're just working super hard and you're super stressed out, but you're kind of learning as you go. And I always said I was like 2 mistakes away from going out of business, but I never kind of made 2 mistakes in a row. I would make lots of mistakes every day, but I mean 2 big mistakes in a row. I would make lots of big mistakes, but usually I'd recover. And then I made, around 2008 or 9, I made one huge mistake, basically, which was I didn't really want investment. I'd interviewed enough entrepreneurs who had sold and then lost control of their companies and basically felt really bad about the integrity of their company. They could comfort themselves with $100 bills and dry up their tears. But I mean, they're all very wealthy, but they didn't. People are fundamentally mission driven. Obviously, we want to be rich, but once you get rich, it's a cliche, but you're still not happy. People want to have a positive effect on the world, and so I really wanted to remain independent. But I needed a lot of money in order to create my own distribution system, like Vice had. Vice magazine created their own distribution system, or I had to distribute through the mainstream guys. And the mainstream distributor, the big ones, they only sell 3 out of 10 copies on average. So environmentally, you become a huge hypocrite if you work with the big distributors. So you're printing and milling and shipping and binding and reshipping magazines 6 times on average, and then they basically get recycled or thrown away. Recycling magazines isn't that eco, because you have to take the inks out, and it's hard to reuse the paper, and it's energy intensive, and they've already been shipped 6 times. And most magazines that talk about eco stuff are printed in China. We were printed in the US. We were trying to do everything kind of ethically and walk our talk, which is the name of our video series. So I don't know if that's too complicated, but we had to work with this mainstream distributor, and I could have been wealthy and successful pretty much overnight. Literally, that's what Yoga Journal did in 1998. We went from 30,000 copies to 350,000 in 1 issue, because the new owner said, we have a good product, I'm going to front a ton of money, and then you get paid basically $1 per issue that you distribute, and it costs you less than that. So, and you only sell 1 out of, or 3 out of 10,
Mm-hmm.
but you basically make your money back. So it's kind of free distribution, and the distributors make all the money, and the bookstores make the money, you know. But I was unwilling to only sell 3 out of 10, and I didn't have the money to create my own distribution system. So suddenly I was kind of faced with, my only option was to remain small. And if you want to change the world, get outside the choir, like you were alluding to before, reach Republicans and reach people who don't already agree with everything you're talking about, like composting, or, you know, if you want to get beyond Portlandia style, you know, you have to grow and you have to be accessible and mainstream. And we had that kind of fun, accessible brand, but I didn't have the distribution to back it. So at that point, like Labor Day 2008, ironically Labor Day, I like met with my lead editor-in-chief and I said, I think I'm going to go online, and I don't really have money to do the print and the online at the same time. And once we go online, we're going to lose all of our advertisers because we have no readership at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm basically going to have to like start Elephant Up again. So we went from being this kind of pretty successful, promising publication to nothing, and we basically went dark. And you know, it was like a cowboy song. Like I gave up my car, gave up my office. You saw it, or we talked about all of my furnitures and storage in my garage now. My house went into foreclosure. I lost my staff. It was intense, and I was working on this like another Mac laptop that was pretty much broken. So you had to move all the windows into the top left corner of the screen and minimize everything. And I was kind of like going blind working on this laptop alone in my like dark, cold house that was in foreclosure.
Oh, wow, like, that is like
it was pretty
rags
intense.
to riches story.
Yeah, or riches to rags, kind of.
Yeah,
I mean, I went from successful to like, and it was a cool experience of being able to fail as an entrepreneur without actually completely failing.
But you didn't fail.
Right. So it was an experience of failing, like, it felt like I kind of was, you know, those like Indiana Jones or something where the plane's in a nosedive and you have to pull up and you don't know if you're going to pull up over the mountain in time or crash and burn. And you're kind of rebuilding the airplane while you're falling. So, yeah, so I
Did you have help? Did anyone come in and help rescue you?
We had 2 offers for investment that were, one of them was substantial. And, I mean, both were pretty substantial. Both were substantial. One got serious. And I said no, even though I was in foreclosure. I just didn't want to, again, as an entrepreneur, I wanted to be able to take risks with my own, not that I have money, but my own, you know, only risk myself and not risk other people's money. And once you take some money, you basically have to sell. You have to have a liquid event, or you have to buy out your investors at some point. And I just didn't feel good about it. There's a book called Small Giants that talks about companies like Patagonia, or goes through like a dozen different companies, all of whom are successful, make tons of money, but remained independent, and therefore were able to kind of hew to their mission. And it's not an idealistic book. It's a book by an Inc. magazine editor, INC. Wow. And that's the kind of company Elephant really wants to be. We want to be huge, but be able to hold to our mission. We want to be able to pay our staff well, which we do, and you know, do all our weird, like one issue of Elephant magazine well before Prop 8, if you remember Prop 8, which was trying to legalize civil unions, I think, in California, and it got rejected barely. And then it became sort of a national issue. It was the beginning, that rejection, ironically, was the beginning of like widespread discussion and acceptance in a way of the notion that.
No, I remember. Yeah.
So we put
how that unfolded.
We put gay rights, civil unions, gay marriage on the cover, and we were a mainstream magazine at that point in Whole Foods and stuff. Whole Foods didn't even want to carry the issue, not because they were opposed to it, but because they don't love controversy, sexuality, violence, any of those kind of issues, and we fell into 2 of those.
They're the world's a beautiful whole thing.
Yeah, they want pastel. I mean, but everyone's like that. I mean, bookstores are, bookstores are a little more, they're into whatever. But anyway, so I was able to always do risky covers and do risky things, and just do that based on my own judgment. And if I was wrong, only I paid the price, ideally. And I mean, ultimately, it affects the company as well. But yeah, so I didn't want investment, so I just kind of went for it. And that's why we won those Twitter awards, and we got crazy about social media because that was the new distribution point.
Okay.
And I was kind of in a rush to try and build up a readership again.
Was there any other strong topics that you took on during this time that really helped push readership?
I mean, honestly, it's funny. We're really mission driven, so we don't really think about strategy. We just share what we care about, and equal rights has always been one of those. Whether it's feminism or animals, or not to put them all in the same bucket, but or gay rights. But there's lots of really, I'm a vegan. Wasn't a vegan. I ate meat when I started Elephant, but when you write about the stuff and you interview enough people, I've interviewed Michael Pollan and Dr. Andrew Weil and hundreds of people, many of whom aren't vegan, but who talk about kind of good food, real food, animal welfare, or I interview people about feminism or gay rights. I wind up evolving sort of against my will sometimes. I mean, I definitely was not interested in giving up nachos or, whatever when I started Elephant. I'm still regretful about that, actually.
Because you're vegan and you don't have cheese on your
exactly. There's good alternatives, but
and more all the time. I am amazed at every time I go to Whole Foods or another store that something new has come. But all right, let's get back to.
I'm like 190 pounds. I could not have been vegan, I don't think, in a happy way 12 years ago. But now there's so many people are vegetarian and vegan or just kind of checking it out once a week or whatever. There's great options, like you were saying. Coconut ice cream is amazing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. The Bliss stuff is yummy.
So good.
Yeah, and today's been brought by Bhakti Chai.
Which
has provided us with this yummy drink.
Yeah, if you need a refresher.
Okay, just more water at some point. But okay, so let's get back to your personal history. You mentioned a little bit about your family and that you were raised in the Buddhist community here in Boulder. And can you just tell us a little bit more about what that meant for you and, kind of forged, the Wayland that goes out there and is creating this cultural meme of unconditional acceptance of all life and stuff?
Well said. No, I mean, I played Little League baseball and was kind of a normal kid, skateboarding, video games, and Dungeons and Dragons.
And this was growing up in Boulder in the 70s, 80s, probably 80s.
I was born in 74, so really the 80s. Yeah,
that's when you were skateboarding.
Yeah.
And what was life like back then? Because it was a different town then. It wasn't.
It was kind of the same, but obviously way less development, way less money. No California license plates until '87. I felt like after the San Francisco earthquake or something, suddenly we got a lot of people being like, "Where should we go?
Yeah,
that would be safe and sunny."
It's actually part of the reason why I'm here. Because I was in that earthquake, and there was a tsunami not too long after that, and I just imagined the California going in.
We didn't have that.
I only lived about 30 miles from the Pacific, so I mean, that's why I wanted to move to higher ground. Yeah, exactly.
And it was a very simple kind of liberal. It was much more edgy town. There was a lot more sort of poetry and political,
Jello Biafra,
social unrest, protests. Yeah. If there was something awesomely environmental or kind of protesty, we're shutting down Rocky Flats, the nuclear plant. Boulder was there. And there's still that whole old guard here, but they're definitely, not being replaced by a new generation in Boulder.
Wow, even though there's more folks here.
Well, there's the new generations in Boulder that are exciting to me are tech, ad agencies, obviously climbing and cycling and all that has been a constant. But you don't see the same kind of political or environmental generations coming up, which is obviously kind of a worry for a lot of people, including myself. I mean, when I was saying to Robert Rich, who creates the Boulder Denver New Tech gathering, where a lot of the tech people come together. Like you go into that room, there's more energy in that room than at any poetry reading you can go to in Boulder. Like the energy in Boulder has shifted from away from environmentalism or spirituality. You know, Boulder used to be the capital of American Buddhism until like 85 or whatever, when the Shambhala Vajradhatu community largely moved to Canada, my mom included. So yeah, growing up here, it was this wild like Buddhist town where everyone was like meditating really hard and studying really hard and partying really hard and going to lectures, and everyone was super inspired and falling in love and having children. And you know, I went to like Buddhist sort of summer camp that still happens. It's open to anybody. Shabbat Sun summer camp. I was trained in, you know, calligraphy, ikebana, Japanese flower arranging, Japanese archery, horsemanship. Like it was a very kind of, it was almost like out of Tolkien or something, but like the Buddhist version of Lord of the Rings with a lot less like evil spirits and epic soundtracks. You know, it's a lot more boring than that. A lot more meditation. But yeah, it was pretty weird, and I kind of thought it was weird. And then I moved to, you know, like I knew Allen Ginsberg really well, the poet. I was named after Philip Whalen, who's another beat poet. I was half named after him and half after Waylon Jennings, the country singer. And then we moved to a Buddhist center in Vermont. Was when I left, and that was the tail end of that. Was the very beginning of my actual. I had done tons of Buddhist training and practice, but I never really. I thought it was just sort of interesting and cultural, and you know, Buddhism is something you can't really be born Buddhist. You have to like connect with it personally. Right. And it was only when I went off to college, and I got really humbled by the college experience. You know, like I was partying and having fun, but it was also super confusing and lonely, and I just felt kind of lost. And that was the first time on a trip coming back from Boston University to the Buddhist Retreat Center in Vermont, Carmichaeling, that I did a Buddhist program with personal intent. I really was like desperately wanted to kind of ground in some sort of sanity or present moment or something. Because when you're young, at least personally, I was like so wild and full of energy and potential, but also I was like a wild horse. So, you know, Buddhism, meditation, they often talk about is taming your mind and making friends with yourself. And you don't become more boring, hopefully, you just become more genuine. Present. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, instead of caught up in your own. Right. Instead of bucking. Yeah. Right. You can ride your mind instead of having it ride you. Exactly. And so I can see why that training was exercises in that practice with the horseback riding, right? The archery. Yeah. It takes a minute of being still, or a minute of like knowing the energy balance between you and the horse. You know, and who's well said. Yeah. So, yeah. Trungpa Rinpoche said, and he would say lots of sort of things that out of context sound more epic than they were, but he said you couldn't be a Buddhist if you didn't ride a horse. And I think, you know, it was, he wasn't, he didn't mean it literally, but I mean, it's what you were talking about. It's a surfer riding the wave, you know, meeting the challenge and finding the bliss in it. You want more hot water? You know, I'm actually going to have to go in a few minutes, so I will be good. So we can jump into the new media stuff if you want. Yeah, let's go ahead and jump into the new media stuff. So yeah, when I jumped online, I mean, just to stay in business. And that was, you said 2008. 2008, 2009. I think 2009 was January 1st was like our last issue. And then, yeah, I had to jump in with both feet, and, you know, nobody was an expert in social media because it was kind of being invented. And now Facebook was out by then. Facebook, Twitter, I mean, all of it was there, but it was very easy for me to kind of make friends, learn, support other people, be supported by, and kind of nobody. I was already a writer, and I already had a lot of a message going on, so I was sort of a natural at a lot of it. Some things I wasn't that good at, I'm sure, but like Twitter, Facebook, we grew rapidly. We grew, you know, tons every year. And then this year we've grown almost 800% in the last 12 months.
No
Traffic.
way.
Yeah, we were at 1.5 million readers, I think, a year and a half ago.
And now you're at
9.4.
Wow.
So that's like a year and a half.
18 months. That is an amazing.
Yeah. But I think I said like almost 800%. So maybe even like a month ago we were at 8.7 or something like that. So, yeah, I mean, you asked about the difference in the beginning between print and new media. I mean, even if we had become a big, well-respected magazine, we'd be printing 300,000 copies like Yoga Journal.
And only 100,000 would probably get right, and 200
only
would up online.
Yeah, I mean, there's subscribers in there too, so it's a little more complicated. But also, 1 out of 4 magazines that are bought.
But I couldn't like an article
right.
that you guys had on elephant.com and send it to my friend in Germany who's going to share it with her friends in Germany and then their friend in England. I mean,
ironically, the digital world is very organic. You can naturally share, organically share stuff. It really is
globalization. And elephant, really is, it is a global concept.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that I think of you when I think of elephant is that, you are kind of masterminding a cultural meme here. And, we were talking, you were asking about something for the treehouse, and I mentioned going to Home Depot. Oh, yeah. And then you said, oh no, we're not using that. And I was so embarrassed that I mentioned going to Home Depot because I'm like, well, because I know, like, that's where you're at. I still go to Home Depot,
right.
So, like,
but it's not black and white. I mean, so we call it the mindful life, and we've called it that since 2002. The whole term mindful is big in the Buddhist world. And now mindfulness was on the cover of Time magazine this year, which, when they put yoga on the cover of Time in 2000, that was like the official blow up of yoga nationally.
Exactly.
Huge.
I got my teacher training in 2001. Right.
Wow.
God, jump right on that.
So now mindfulness is kind of going through that Renaissance or romantic, fad kind of thing, cultural meme, as you put it. And, the mindful life isn't like Home Depot, evil, local McGucks.
Yeah.
Perfect. I mean, McGuckins has tons of, it is local and independently owned, which we love, but they have products that are good and products that aren't. And Home Depot does a lot of great things. They've been super active in kind of eco.
In reforestation.
Making their suppliers use more eco packaging. And so it's not black and white. But obviously if you can reuse or upcycle, which, 90% of that thing, literally 90% of that.
Well, a lot of communities don't have a McGuckins, and they don't have a resource yard. Whenever I travel and I'm like, wow, I mean, this kind of is a bubble here. Now, the bubble can reproduce. I think it's a reproducible bubble. But I don't know, like, how fast that can happen.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I don't think of it as a bubble. I think of it as like an oasis. I think the bubble is sort of
it's containing
it's
rather
a condescending word. I mean, if you look at America 100 years ago, everyone ate organic. Everyone ate cooked.
Yeah.
Everyone rode their horse or bicycle or whatever the hell. Climate change wasn't an issue. Like, all the things that, crafting, all the hipster Portlandia jokes, everyone was doing that stuff. And it's not that we're trying to go back in time, but there's a lot of things that society does now, like mowing down. I visited my family in Virginia. They're literally cutting the tops off mountains, devastating the watershed for largely poor folk. It affects and most of them are conservative who are being affected, and they're protesting what's going on. Like, this isn't a political thing. This is really just, cancer rates have skyrocketed, obesity, diabetes. There's a reason elephant is a popular thing right now. It's because we're trying to talk about a way of life where you can have your laptop and your cell phone and fly around, but you can also try and be ethical in your decisions and enjoy being ethical. And also enjoy your life. I mean, fundamentally, it's more fun to think about. Like, there's a Buddhist slogan that maybe we could wrap up with, or not, you're driving this, but but that says, if you want to be truly fully happy, think of other people first. And other people includes yourself. Just think about
Yeah.
the world and society. If you want to be unhappy, obsess or think only about yourself.
Uh-huh.
And fundamentally, Eleanor Roosevelt, many people have said the same thing.
Yeah, do unto others as you'd want them to do unto you.
The golden
If you behave
rule, Christianity,
in a manner of equal integrity, then there's not a problem.
Yeah. So almost whenever I'm depressed or stressed out or burned out, which is somewhat frequent because I'm human,
Mm-hmm.
if I go to farmer's market or I connect with the community or I help out someone, suddenly I stop trying to figure out my own misery and happiness, which is sort of ego obsessing about itself,
right.
and I open up to reality, which is not such a bad thing.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. I think that we pretty much touched on a lot of the stuff that I wanted to.
Detail questions?
No, I wanted to, well, yeah, I guess I want to know, where do you want to go from here?
I mean, I was actually watching.
And Waylon, the personality, because, I mean, to me, you drive Elephant.
Mm-hmm.
You really do. It's kind of about you in this, and we all like you for it, right? So.
Well, it's kind of like what I was just saying with the think about other people thing. Like, it is sort of I am holding the container that is Elephant, but there's a lot of great writers. 99% of the articles read on Elephant aren't by me. Where we're going is, I was actually just watching Skyfall last night, the James Bond movie, and they were showing this huge globalization, he's popping around the world, and there's like all these skyscrapers and all these people fighting and murdering each other. It's James Bond. And I was thinking, until Elephant is reaching into every one of these skyscrapers and every desktop and everyone in the world, what we're doing to our planet and to our own happiness is pretty devastating. So we really need to be everywhere and accessible, not from the point of view of like worldwide domination, because I'll die, or Elephant will die. Like, we have no overarching point. We're not trying to like take over the world like a game of Risk, but we are trying to make fundamental human wisdom and happiness accessible. So I think, on a concrete level, I have 2 books coming out this year. One is going to be the first book from Elephant's new imprint, where we'll be republishing our best content, whether it focuses on like parenting or being pregnant.
Is it just for the year, or is it for?
No, it won't be like best of Elephant.
I mean, everything up to date, or is it going to be like just for a certain time period, like the last year?
The Elephant books?
Yeah, this one that's coming out.
Well, my 2 books, mine are, one is a sort of collection of love stuff that's pretty popular. It was sort of my own exploration of love. What kind of love could I settle down with? Because I just turned 40, so I'm starting to think about that. And the Buddhist notion of love includes some sort of sense of humor and spaciousness and room for change and independence, and isn't just about like becoming one and kind of this claustrophobic like rom-com coziness for life, although some coziness is fun. And then the other book is titled Self-Help is Bad for You. And it's kind of a snarky, like, Stephen Colbert meets Buddhism kind of thing. But then we'll be publishing a lot of like our own Elephant writers and paying them. A big part of my goal as a journalist is to pay all of our best writers. So if you write something that's worthwhile, that gets shared a lot and viewed a lot, I want to pay you for it. So that's relatively unique, sadly, in the new media landscape. So we've been paying people for like 3 years now, but we want to pay a lot more. So we're kind of making Elephant into sort of like a Kickstarter Reddit journalism hybrid, so people can vote on their favorite stories and tip their favorite authors, and we'll just pay people more and share it more. And then growing Elephant, in our video series, I do all these sort of interviews with.
Walk the talk.
Yeah, that's something I've learned a lot about. It's kind of hard for me to do, but I enjoy it. You know? And making that more accessible, and we've been talking with a partner, a lot about kind of having our brands come together on the video series. They have distribution, money, and resources, and we have content and great people we're talking with, great subjects. We focus on like GMOs or fracking or real food or yoga or, you know, the whole range of elephanting stuff. So, yeah, I think basically just to get to the point where we're like Huffington Post size, but hopefully independent, we can pay our writers, we can double pay them through the books, we can do a video series. We have it already are starting an online sort of social media school. We're calling Elephant University or Elephant
I saw a little bit
Academy or something. Because we already have like 40 apprentices who pay to learn from us for 4 months, and we train them. We just did it right before, that's why I was late. So we're teaching them how to do Facebook or Twitter or whatever, and then they get jobs in that because it's a booming industry, obviously. And then we'll have an in-person gathering, so we'll have a sort of elephant-like institute gathering. So lots of things. You know?
Wow. Sounds very exciting. I can't wait to see the evolution.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah.
I wish it just happened.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
That's half the fun.
It is. It is. Yeah.
I can see how much you've enjoyed it.
I did. Well, good.
I mean, that's what you put out to the public who sees you.
Yeah.
Is that you're having a lot of fun doing exactly what you want to do.
It's really, I mean, that's the great thing for readers. Being an entrepreneur, if you have good mentors along the way, you have to listen to people a lot and learn, and be willing to be wrong frequently. But if you're an entrepreneur, you get to do exactly what you're good at. And if you're not succeeding as an entrepreneur, that's fine, but you need to hone in on what you care about, what you're good at, and what's of service to others.
What you're mission driven.
Yeah, and you know what will make money. So that's sort of a definition of right livelihood right there. You have to make a living, you have to be good at it, you have to enjoy it, and it has to be useful to other people.
Do you think everybody can have that experience?
That's a great question. I think everyone could.
You don't have to answer it.
I think everyone could.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people, including myself. I mean, for many years, I owe Travis a great debt. You know, for many years I was working, not making good money. I was living paycheck to paycheck. It was very hard to get off that kind of habit trail wheel. You know, and then I just was kind of willing at some point to just go completely broke and lose everything. So does everyone want to do that? I mean, no. And especially if you have children and responsibilities. I mean, at the time when I started Elephant, I was 28, so I was willing to be completely broke. I mean, I was staying on people's couches when they were gone. I was eating muffins. And
do you feel like the Boulder community has really supported you?
Eating day-old muffins.
Yeah.
I still eat muffins. What's that?
Do you believe that the Boulder community has really kind of supported you through your processes?
I mean, yes or no. You know, from a like father, like tough love point of view, no. I mean, when I went online, I went from being like a little golden boy at Naturally Boulder parties or whatever. You know, I won Entrepreneur of the Year at Naturally Boulder along with some other people in 2007 to like a nobody, like the guy who walks into the school cafeteria that is Boulder, and you're like nobody. And it was that's what I meant by that feeling of failing. It was a great experience of just being completely humbled. On the other hand, I've met almost every mentor and advisor and writer and all that in line at the Trident or what, you know, at these networking things. Boulder is an amazing, small, focused community, big yet small community. It's a relatively big community, but it's very focused geographically. So you run into these people. I mean, I'm going for lunch with one of the people who actually offered to invest in Elephant a couple of years ago, you know, a multi-millionaire success story in natural products right after this. So it's that kind of town. There's like mentors everywhere you go. So I do have a feeling that if I'm ever stressed, losing my shit, I can just have lunch with some mentor person. They'll be like, well, you know, they'll like set me right. Like I'm not totally clueless for a long time because I can find someone
to bounce.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I have a safety net, a community net.
Yeah.
Yeah. I call farmers market free therapy. Like I'm always wiped out Saturday morning from the week. I'm wiped out and almost fully like just endorphin wise or whatever depressed. And I bike down to farmers market. I pull myself out of my house, bike down to farmers market. Just 2-minute bike ride. Sunshine, children, dogs, food, friends, random people I haven't seen for a while. Eating lunch on the grass, and by the time you leave, you're human again. You know, So.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. No, I definitely feel like I owe Boulder everything, for sure. But I will continue to owe Boulder everything, and that's why I care about it so much, you know.
Well, that's what it comes across like, is that you do.
Yeah.
You love Boulder.
I do.
And it kind of loves you, too.
Yeah, I can feel it. I appreciate it. I mean, I was born here. I am.
Yeah, I mean, you're a Boulder Golden Boy.
Yeah.
You are.
Aww. Kirsten Ray. Well, thanks for taking the time.
Thank you.
Yeah, hope you weren't too cold.
Nope, not too bad. A little bit.
Yeah. We have like slippers and blankets and all that for staff. I have hot water bottles because I never heat it that well.
One time I had a Volkswagen van and I was driving from Seattle down the coast of California, and it was the 70 van, so it didn't have heat in it.
Oh, boy.
So we drove with, like, I had 1 foot out the sleeping bag, like I had the sleeping bag zipped up, you know, you can pull the top open so you can like manage to do 2 feet. And then every about 30 miles we would stop and in a gas station heat up a jar of water and keep it in the sleeping bag with us to create the heat. And we managed to get down, and it was challenging, but
let alone our ancestors,
Yeah, I mean, I felt like I was, like, you know, in a wagon going across the country. All right, well, I better head off. I have another appointment.
All righty.
Thank you so
Busy
much.
lady. Yeah, thank you.
And if I can get